Oh, there is rage on the internet. Rage on the internet! So much rage. Okay, before I get on to today's topic, we're gonna play out a little scenario. I live in New York. Now let's pretend that I want to go to California. There's a couple of different ways that I could do it. Get a flight, I would fly to California, 5 hours later I'd be there. Second, I could take a train. I've always wanted to take a train. Seems very romantic. Like, seems like something you'd do at the end of the 19th century. Or I could get in my car and I could physically drive. Probably out of all those scenarios, and not by much at this point, but probably by all those scenarios, the cheapest alternative for me would be to drive to California. But that doesn't take into consideration opportunity cost. In order for me to drive to California, I'd pretty much have to take a week to go there. Then I'd have to take a week off to come back. I could literally fly to California and back in a day. Now let's keep this in mind. It's gonna tie in, I swear. Now, the rage on the internet today, the United States is gonna give $250 million worth of aid to Egypt. Why do we give Egypt money when we need it at home? And these are viable points, but you have to look deeper to really see what's going on here. So what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to attempt to explain the logic behind giving money to Egypt. I'm not saying whether it's a thing we should do or not, I'm just saying that there is some logic behind it. The biggest reason that everybody's mad is because of timing. Great job, executive department. This is great timing. On March 1st, the sequester goes into effect, basically, you know, chopping $86 billion worth of little things like military and air traffic control and meat inspection, you know, the tiny things. 2 days later, the United States is going to give $250 million worth of aid to Egypt. That is some bad timing. That's like buying a Jose Reyes Marlins jersey in October of last year. Before we go any further, I just want to touch upon the sequester for 1 second. The sequester basically happened because of a deal that was made like 2 years ago, and that the budget needed to be cut and Congress couldn't get it done. Remember back in early November where everybody became presidential pundit for like 1 week on Facebook? Turns out on that ballot they also had other offices up for election, namely every member of the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate. It's really kind of amazing because going into the election, Congress had a 21% approval rate, yet after the election, over 90% of the incumbents were re-elected. So like we said, 2 days after the sequester kicks in, we got this $250 million that's going to be going to Egypt. Why should we give money to Egypt? Again, I'm not saying that we should give money to Egypt, but I'm explaining why we would give money to Egypt. Okay, remember back in 2011 when like all of Northern Africa was in revolution? The Arab Spring? Something? Oh, don't get mad on Facebook and not know anything that's happening. Well, Egypt was one of these countries as well, and the decades-long ruler Mubarak was finally deposed, and they had the first presidential elections ever in Egypt, and the new president now is President Morsi. Morsi? Yeah, we'll say Morsi. Yeah, Morsi. Unsurprisingly, since that revolution, the Egyptian economy has been tanking. So what does that have to do with us? So what? I won't see the pyramids for a couple of more years. The answer is globalization. We have to remember that as Americans living in America, we're part of the largest economy in the world, and that's not a self-contained economy. We're linked to everything, so world events do affect us. The Suez Canal, which was completed in 1869, is probably the most valuable waterway in the entire world. Remember that analogy we had about California? Let's move it over to the Suez Canal. It's the only way to get from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and basically shortcut around Africa. In effect, it turns what would normally be a 2-week journey into a 14-hour trip. 2009 estimates had it pulling in $6.2 billion. The average toll for the Suez Canal is like $250,000, so it makes the Chesapeake Bay Bridge not seem that bad. It handles over 16,000 ships a year. more than that, it handles 7.5% of all world trade. So let's link the two together. You have a very fragile democracy trying to stabilize itself. You have a very bad economy and a segment of the population that's pissed off about both of them. That's a pretty good recipe to have yet another revolution. Meanwhile, in Egypt's possession, they have the most valuable waterway in all of the world. Now, I know the United States over the past 100 years has a spotty record picking the right horse in the international arena, but it is very vital to us to make sure that Egypt is succeeding, if only to keep traffic going through that canal. The canal was closed in the 60s and 70s, and it was really bad for world trade. So maybe spending $250 million to make sure that this country at least runs efficiently enough for us to use it is a good thing. It's almost like we pay our membership to those big box stores, and then we go in and actually buy our product. We want to make sure that that box store is still open. Is there logic behind giving Egypt this money? Yes. Is it the right thing for us to do? I don't know, that's up to you. I'm just here to give you more information so you can make that decision. Alright, let's sum up real quick what we've learned. Number one, we're all going to be paying real close attention to the 2014 interim elections, right? Right? Say it. Right? Yes. Thank you. Number two, democracy is expensive. And number three, the Suez Canal is basically the warp pipe from Super Mario Brothers. Alright, that's all I got. Hopefully I've complicated the issue for you because it is a complicated issue. Be safe and I'll see you next time. Rage on the internet!